It's not, good idea. And it's not about just being trustworthy in the I stopped the addictive behavior. It's like I'm changing. I'm being a different person. I'm showing up differently. I'm learning, baby steps to have empathy. I'm learning to have tolerance for uncomfortable emotions, like when you're mad at me, but that doesn't come, instantaneously. And here's a challenge. Like, do I think I'm going to relapse today? No, I went to my 12-step last night and, I'm doing what I need to do to take care of myself. But I don't ever say, oh, I'll never do that again. I don't want to, and I'm doing what I need to do to not do it. But, if your betraying partner uses that kind of language, to me, that's a problem in and of itself. So what are your thoughts, Scott?
Well, yeah, I mean, Dr. Rob did a study with Charles Samnell and Jennifer Schneider. It's been quite a while ago now.
Yeah.
When addicts were first starting to discover online ways of acting out. So what they wanted to find out was, does online cheating, does online betrayal hurt as much as in-person betrayal? So they interviewed betrayed partners of sex addicts and cheaters who were engaging in a mix of online versus real world behaviors. And they found out what they wanted to find out was the answer to the primary question, which is yes, online hurts just as much. But the follow-up questions, they wanted to know, what is it that causes the most pain? And why is it the same for online behaviors and real world behaviors? Because the addicts of the day were convinced that, it doesn't count if it's online, and their betrayed partners were like, oh no, it does. And what they found was it's less about the behavior and more about the secrets and the lying. It's the loss of trust. And when you've been cheating, however long you've been cheating, whether it's 3 months or 30 years, all of that comes into question. The whole relationship comes into question. Your betrayed partner, if you're an addict, is thinking, if you lied and covered up and manipulated and gaslighted about something as important as our sex life and our romantic life, what else are you lying about and covering up and manipulating me? It's very hard to trust somebody who's betrayed the most core part of an intimate relationship. And at the same time, you've probably, as an addict, pushed away your betrayed partner as part of your internal justification of cheating. Oh, well, I'm not getting my needs met at home, so I'll cheat. Now that's total BS. But it's probably not so BS because you're pushing the person who could meet your needs away. You're not letting her or him meet your needs. And they sense that and feel that. So they've been pushed away, they've been lied to, they've been betrayed in the worst possible way. And they're not going to start trusting you, just because you've gone 3 weeks without cheating or 3 months without cheating. The answer is, when is, my partner going to cut me a break? Is, when you earn it, and that's going to take a year to 18 months. And that's if you do everything right. That's if you don't cheat again. That's if you start telling the truth and telling it faster. Rigorous honesty is telling the truth and telling it faster, and not just answering the question that your partner asks and stopping, answering the question and then providing all the other relevant information, or not even forcing your partner to ask the question. And we call this active truth telling versus passive truth telling. And addicts in recovery, particularly early recovery, are really good at passive truth telling. And it forces the betrayed partner to do all the work to find out the truth. And that is not how you, as an addict or a cheater, re-earn trust. You have to volunteer the information. If your partner would want to know, you have to tell it. And you'd better tell it instead of forcing your partner to do detective work and pry and dig and ask follow-up questions. Your partner should never have to ask you a follow-up question. When you get a question about why are you late, you should tell the whole truth, all of it, not just the part that you think will get you in the least amount of trouble. So this is why it takes so long to re-earn trust. And they question everything from, you told me you cheated on me 3 times, but was it 3 times or 30? That time when we went to Napa Valley and did the wine tour and made love under the olive branches, were you thinking about me or your secretary or porn or, so yeah, it takes a while to re-earn trust. And your job as an addict is to accept that. I mean, you're the one who blew it.
Yeah, but I'm going to have a huge caveat to this too, is like, there's a thing called formal disclosure. So just vomiting information without having any kind of plan is traumatizing to the partner. So answering questions truthfully, but also within the confines of, because partners, and I get it, want to know and want safety, and they perceive that if they find out everything, then it's going to be okay, or they're going to be able to stop it or whatever. And so yes, telling the truth, telling it faster, being clear, but also, making sure you're working with qualified professionals to have a formal disclosure, holding the space for the relationship, and how do we proceed with this? Disclosure is not a do-it-yourself thing. I say that often. It's like you really want help. So initially, getting guidance of, what are safe topics to do. And from a partner standpoint, having these questions, like, what about this? What about this? What about this? Having it be all consuming 24/7, and the addict getting bombarded with this, not that they deserve any sympathy, from that standpoint, but it also wears down their defenses, and then they don't behave well, then they get defensive. So, getting support for each of you, both of you, to navigate all this is, it's terribly difficult, stuff. So truth telling, yes, but I can't tell you how many, betray partners I've talked to recently, and they are so traumatized because they got all the gory details, and they're like, I can't get this out of my head, and I'm like, it pains me. But either through discovery, several of them were they saw, and on phones and things, but some of them they asked questions, and the addict's going, well, I have to tell her everything, and they did, and it wasn't within a confine that would be helpful to moving the relationship forward. So it's challenging from that standpoint. Again, why getting good help, to navigate this is so critically important for both of you, so that it doesn't make it worse, in the trying to make it better. So.
Yeah, thank you for that caveat. Yeah, I mean, rigorous honesty, I always consider part of rigorous honesty doing a proper disclosure.
Yes.
That it's a process, it takes some time. So thank you for making that distinction. Somebody popped in the chat feature. There are a couple of differences between online and in-person acting out, and those occur when the addict brings an STD into the home, or a pregnancy, things like that. And yeah, so definitely a different situation when those consequences hit.
But the betrayal is real, regardless.
The betrayal is real either way.
Yeah, and I've had partners of porn addicts, I'll label it that way, who have gone, like, haven't felt like, their betrayal was as bad as somebody else's. And I'm like, it is. It's still, like, it's a betrayal of the relationship. So, comparing that, my hurt shouldn't be as bad as that. It's not as bad. No, it still is your hurt. It's your betrayal. It still is, it broke the trust within the relationship. But yeah, I mean, unfortunately, yes, we have, again, I've talked to a lot of people this week. It's like we got through the holidays, and Like the lid came off the can, and it's just been nuts. And yeah, they're dealing with very real consequences of the behaviors. And unfortunately, the partner contracting an STD has been part of that, for some as well. So it's very painful. I mean, so first question: my essay does not and will not take check-ins seriously. I'm very frustrated and tired of the process. I can't seem to make him understand how important it is. I am ready for separation because of this. He cannot be shaken out of this. Why do sex addicted spouses have a hard time with this?
Waiting for this. I got stuck on, I can't seem to make him understand how important it is. I'm sorry, you can't make him do anything. He's an adult, and he's going to do what he wants to do. You can try to get him to understand, you can try to convey to him how important it is, but whether he takes that in or not is up to him. I'm ready for separation because of this. He can't be shaken out of this. Why do sex addicted spouses have a hard time with this? I think some sex addicted spouses have a hard time with it, and some don't. I know plenty of them, their daily check-in with their betrayed partner is the best part of their day. It's the hardest part of their day, but the best part of their day. I understand your frustration. Absolutely, 100%. It's a part of recovery that you need, and it sounds like he's not participating, or not participating in any meaningful way. And that would be incredibly frustrating to me. And I would take that personally as a sign that he's not doing the work. He's not doing the work to heal his addiction, and he's not doing the work to heal our relationship. Why isn't he doing the work? I don't know. He may still be active in his addiction. He may still be in denial. He may be blaming. He may still, 100 reasons. And it takes a while for addicts to come around sometimes. It took me a couple of years really to come around. I was in and out and spinning for 2 years. Now, I didn't have a partner there that I was destroying at the same time. But, how can he be shaken out of it? It's up to him. As much as you want to get well for him, as much as you want to micromanage and control whatever he's doing and get him to behave and be the husband you want him to be, you can't. It's up to him. And he'll either realize it or not. So, what you can do is get support for yourself, get feedback from people who know your situation. If you've got a therapist, this is a great thing to take therapy, and, you can set your boundaries. These are my boundaries. If you choose not to participate fully in daily check-ins, I will ask you to sleep in the other room or move out of the house, boundaries like that. And that will convey that this is really important to me. What he chooses to do with it is still up to him, unfortunately.
Yeah, I honor too that you are, I'm ready for separation. I think that will convey the message of where you stand really clearly. Again, just like Scott said, what he chooses to do with it or not do with it. Again, unfortunately, a lot of times people are not willing to step into that space, but they want the other person to make the decision. So this then it's, like you're doing this, when you're just holding a clear boundary for you. So a clear and safe boundary. I don't blame you for being tired of this. It's like, it is up to each of us in recovery, chooses to do our work, and we get the direct benefit of doing the work if we choose to do it. So, my life is completely better and different, than it would have been, if I'd remained in active addiction. Sitting on the fence of like, well, I'm not going to act out, but I'm not really going to do the work. You don't get any of the benefits of the acting out, but you also don't get any of the benefits of recovery. So it's sad to me when somebody, is not willing, but I thousands of people over the decades that, I know. And sadly, that I answer the phone all the time. There's a whole bunch of people that go, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. Well, then don't expect change. It can't happen. So next question. As a betrayed partner, I feel like I am trying to downshift from crisis mode to the long haul. My focus has been almost entirely on my spouse for a while now. I am finding that I am struggling to damp down the frantic feelings, etc. Now that my spouse is getting into a better recovery, I am struggling to downshift into normalcy. I almost feel like I'm more emotional lately. Is this normal? Any advice? Side note, we have a trickle discoveries which added to this anxiety and never did disclosure, but I feel like almost all of it has come out. So yeah, I mean, I think that that's really normal, and your brain and body is going, how do I know the crisis is over? So it does take time, and the longer he continues to show you that he's changing, the more you'll be able to do that. But I don't think like a stick shift car, you can go from fourth to first. It's going to be, I love that analogy. Actually, the downshift is like, okay, I'm going to just shift down a little bit, but I suspect it'll be incremental, and then you're going to something will be like like it really isn't true. I need to be in high frantic mode. So I acknowledge that I do think that is really normal, but that you're able to identify, this is what I see and this is what I'm trying to do, that to me seems like a really good progress. What about you, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, relationship healing is 2 steps forward, 1.5 steps back. That's the process. It's a roller coaster, and hopefully it smooths out over time, but it's always going to be up and down like this. And I love that you recognize you're in crisis mode, or that you've been in crisis mode. Betrayed partners, of course you're in crisis mode. You've just been betrayed in the worst possible way. I mean, if your child gets hit by a car, you're in crisis mode. You react. You're in this fight, flight, freeze mode. It's the same thing when you get cheated on, except you're the victim this time. So you're in fight, flight, freeze mode, and you stay there for a while. And what happens is your body kind of upticks. So that becomes the new normal. And to downshift, Tami hit it. You can't do it all at once. It's going to have to downtick the same way it upticked, because your brain and body are going to have to readjust to. It's not crisis. We're not in the emergency room anymore. Now we're in the, we're even out of the recovery room, and we're just in a regular hospital room now. But we're still scared, and we're still terrified, and I still don't trust, and but I'm working toward that, and it's a process. And I think you're exactly where you're supposed to be, probably. Particularly when you see that your spouse is getting into better recovery. That's when you're able to start to relax. But his recovery will probably do this as it ramps up, and your crisis will probably do this as it ramps down. So yeah, and I do encourage you to try and do a proper disclosure. That trickle discoveries are awful, and if you do the full disclosure, you'll know that you've got everything. You'll know that you've got everything instead of just thinking it's all out.
Yeah, and I'm more neutral on that, because I know a lot of couples that just go, I know it was bad, and how do we move forward from here? And so like that is really, I know a lot of couples who don't do a formal disclosure. They just go, here's where we're at, and we're going to move forward from there. Him making sure that he's got, a full timeline of what he's, of his particular, is acting out, that, would be really critically important. How that, what you choose to do with it, is up to you. There was something else I was gonna, I can't think of it right now. I remember. You mentioned the medical, and I remember I was with my mother, and my sister had chronic, medical conditions. She was not in a crisis, but she'd not too long had one. I was with my mother, the phone rings. She deer in the headlights. She could not hear anything, even though the first part of it was, there's no emergency, da da da, like, but I thought that's exactly what happens still, because your body is so quick to react in those moments. So that will be your first reaction, and that's normal. So give yourself some some space to just go, yep, I'm going to have those reactions. I'll be able to do some mindfulness. I'll be able to call somebody and get a better read on, is this really a crisis, or is this like, okay, this is something, like more neutral. So
Betrayed partners, they've done research, display what we call post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms. It doesn't mean you necessarily have post-traumatic stress disorder, but you just display the symptoms. And my mother watched my dad die for a year and a half. Every time the phone rang, she thought it was bad news, and he's been dead for 4 months. She was just out here. Every time the phone rang, she would go, and
wow,
it's not even your phone, Mom. But she's still, that's still there. And betrayed partners are the same way. It's sometimes to come down from that, it just takes a long time. But I love that you're working on it and you're recognizing that he's actually doing his work. So, I mean, that's where you want to be.
And then it's okay for you to downshift, like that. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Next question. Oh, love you both. Thank you. I discovered my husband's SA behavior in January of 2021. He has been working on recovery since then. He is seeing a CSAT, took the SA 101 level 1, 2, and 3 grade from Seeking Integrity, and has done EMDR. He's in Sexaholics Anonymous, a 12-step, and has a sponsor. He has been sober for 6 months, and we are getting along well. Now that I understand addiction better, I'd say he has junk food addiction too. There seems to be elements of entitlement, compulsion, and numbing. He also numbs with video games and TV to some extent. I am so grateful that he is sexually sober that I haven't said anything about these other issues. Are these things something that will likely resolve as he continues recovery and works on the underlying pain? Is this something I should talk to him about? We're going to unpack this. We're going to go back. So should I leave it alone until further along in recovery? Discussing directly to his CSAT doesn't feel right, as it seems like I'm going behind my husband's back. I would appreciate any advice. So let's start with so some other compulsive behaviors. Are these things something that will likely resolve as he continues recovery and works on the underlying pain?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. In the excuse me, in the work groups, I actually talked to the guys about paying attention to other behaviors, particularly food, TV, and video games. And if they're gamblers, stay away from the casino, because we will switch addictions. If I can't numb out with my sex addiction, I'll numb out with video games or some Ben and Jerry's. Now, you'd probably rather have him eating Ben and Jerry's than looking at porn, but at the same time, you might like him to pay attention to the fact that he's numbing. So yeah, and it's normal for addicts to try and find a new coping mechanism when the old one goes away, because that's what addiction is. It's our coping mechanism. It's how we numb out.
So what do you think about, is this something I should talk to him about?
If you see that it is looking like a problem, yeah, I mean, and hopefully it sounds like he's doing quite a bit of work, so you could probably bring it up without him getting too defensive. And just say, I noticed that you're eating a lot of junk food lately, or you're doing this a lot lately. I wonder if you're using it to numb out, and just kind of let that percolate for a while and see what he says, So I think you can certainly, if you have a couples counselor, bring it up in couples counseling for sure, where there's somebody there to moderate. But otherwise, if you're able to converse well at this point, without him getting too defensive, because that takes a while to go away, I'd say you could bring it up, particularly if it upsets you. I mean, if you're not happy with it, I mean, you should bring it up, probably.
Happy or concerned, like I think I'm curious, I'm curious why the junk food and why the gaming, and are you stressed out? Is there something you're looking for? Like what's going on for you that makes it so it makes it so attractive. But I think expressing curiosity and even concern, like junk food is not a healthy thing. Is there something that we can do? Like go for a walk. Instead of
And we
you
get some
reaching for the
healthier
bed.
snacks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I think that there are ways to approach it that can. And if he gets defensive, that would be, I'm curious why you're defensive right now. I mean, like it's challenging. It's challenging. I always say my husband is so brave. He'll step into the space and go, you might want to go to a meeting. And like I know where it's coming from with him. So if he's saying that, it's like, I probably need to go to a meeting. It's not like he's trying to manage my life. He's concerned about me as he should be. So
It takes a while to get there as a recovering addict. The first time somebody looked at me and said, "Do you need to go to a meeting?" I got really pissed. But I realized shortly thereafter that yes, I do need to go to a meeting.
Yes, it would be beneficial for everyone if I chose that. So okay, should I leave it alone until he's further along in recovery?
If you're worried about it now is the time, I think.
Yeah. And I agree, not discussing with his CSAT. So yeah.
Active addicts, we rely on you not bringing it up. So, we lie and we keep secrets and we manipulate. And when you bring it up, the last thing we want is for you to bring it up, because then we'll have to confront it. But if it needs to be confronted, you're going to have to confront it, and he's going to have to confront it.
Yeah. Well, and at some point it's like, I can't be happy, joyous, and free if I'm using other stuff. And I've shared on the webinars before, like, chemicals, absolutely. Food, absolutely. Like, and the more difficult, addiction for me to work on was was absolutely the food. And, I have learned to navigate and have a, relationship with food that, works for me now. It wasn't working for anybody before, so it's challenging, but I know this, I know that I could be addicted to anything that I find to be helpful and numb out, it could be problematic. So I have to watch my behaviors across everything, which gets challenging, but it keeps me paying attention. And I think that that's the key to all of this, is like, what's going on for me that I'm tempted to go, go bake a cake, because I want to eat it, so
cakes.
I do make good cakes, which is challenging too, because like I like to bake. So okay.
There was a last little bit there that we didn't address. She had mentioned going directly to his.
Oh yeah.
That's a no.
Yeah.
Don't do that. You said it would feel like going behind his back, and that is exactly how he would.
Yeah.
You could suggest that maybe he could take it to his CSAT.
Yeah.
But it's not your job to communicate with his therapist.
Yeah. I agree. Okay. I'm a betrayed partner. I know everyone's story is different, but my husband did PMO and fantasy, porn, masturbation. Oh, is that orgasm?
I think so.
Okay. And fantasy. He is doing all right now. We are in counseling, but I struggle with forgiveness, respecting him, seeing him the same, etc. I'm wondering if there is a timeline on how long it will take a betrayed spouse to heal. We are 2 years in. We are preparing for a full disclosure. Our original counselor was terrible in regards to disclosure, so we did not have one. Thanks.
We've been talking a lot about disclosure today. Disclosure is when betrayed partners are able to start healing. A full disclosure is when most betrayed partners tell you things started to get better. They started to be able to trust and view the other person with respect again. So I encourage you to get that out of the way. And I'm very sorry that your original counselor didn't push for that. And look, there's always going to be, excuse me, before the infidelity and after, before you discovered it and after you discovered it. Some things are never going to fully heal. That's okay. because other things can be a lot better. You can develop a much better intimacy, like emotional intimacy, and you can develop a much better sexual intimacy. And it does happen for couples, but it does take time, and there is no timeline. I mean, you're 2 years in, but you haven't had a disclosure yet. So, I mean, that's not a timeline I would recommend. And I suspect that a lot of the healing hasn't occurred because maybe some of the work hasn't occurred. Some of the process hasn't occurred that can help you heal. I don't know, Tammy, thoughts?
Oh, I have a lot of thoughts on. He is doing all right now. To me, that's mediocre. So, and we are in counseling. So that was the first thing I keyed in on, was like, he is doing all right. If he is actively engaging in his recovery, I would think he'd be doing better than all right. So I'm not sure. I'm not, I mean, just doing a 15-minute session, once a week with a therapist, even the best therapist, isn't enough. So what is he really doing for his recovery? Has he done the porn addiction 101 work group? Does he have, what is his 3-circle plan? Like, what is he doing that's in his outer circle that's, really changing things? Does he have a sponsor, in 12? I mean, like, what is he really doing? Because if we are in counseling, is like, I wouldn't be okay either. I mean, that's what I really hear. So then let's get to but I struggle with forgiveness. Forgiveness is something you do for you. It's not about him. It's like letting him not live in your head with all the negativity. Respecting him. You will never respect him 100% like you used to, because he's betrayed you. And seeing him the same, again, exactly what Scott said. It's like, you won't see him the same, and you shouldn't, but you can see him like in other areas, like his honesty and his integrity. You will, like, those will shine. They didn't before. So it is a shift, but it can be in recovery, it needs to be a really good shift. So I'm more concerned about what is he really, really, really doing for his recovery, and what are you, what is your support therapist, not your couples counselor, but what is your support therapist, doing to help you? Like, somebody mentioned EMDR, can be helpful with the triggering traumas. I mean, it's more about you getting the help, him being in the accountability, cognitive behavioral therapy, stop the behavior, but also then address the underlying issues. His acting out is a symptom. What's he doing to stop the behavior, but address that. So your healing will, as Scott said, lag behind, because he has to show that he's trustworthy, and that you can start. Plus, the other thing is, he's known this the whole time. He's known he was acting out, so you didn't. So his healing gets to start from day one when he stops. Your healing, really lags behind that, like Scott mentioned. So next question. I am a betrayed partner who asked for separation 14 months ago. I am in 12-step group working on step 5. He has not chosen to join any group, has no sponsor. He says he is sober. Is sober from porn and sees an individual therapist along with couples therapists, no CSAT. I think 12 steps are a key part of recovery, and no, I can't make him go. So do I bring up how helpful group has been for me? I know being sober does not mean recovery. True. So Scott, hold up your book. Do you have it handy?
Which book?
Life Anonymous.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't. Sorry.
Okay. I have one. Go ahead. Keep going.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, the first thing I'm reading here is you asked for a separation 14 months ago. Are you separated or not? I love that you're doing. Point. I love that you're doing your work. I love that you're in a 12-step group. I love that you're working step 5. The book Tammy.
Life Anonymous. I'm going to hold it. I'm going to hold it right in front of me so you can see it. But Scott, along with one of our webinar hosts, Kristen Snowden, co-authored this book, and it's for people who are not addicts. Of course, Scott is, but
yeah, I wrote from the addict perspective. Kristen wrote from the non-addict perspective, and we both talked about how everyone can benefit from the 12 steps. So you're in a 12-step group, you're working on the steps, you're here, you're clearly doing work. He's clearly not doing
Not, yeah.
I mean, no CSAT, that's a red flag. He does have an individual therapist, but not a CSAT. I'm just not a fan. You got a couples therapist, again, not a CSAT. And he's not going to 12 steps. You know, you can tell him how helpful it's been for you, but you can't make him go. You know, you can lead the horse to water. You can't make him drink. We kind of talked about this earlier. No matter how much you want him to heal, it's up to him. So your job is to do the best you can do for yourself and make the right decisions for yourself and have good boundaries for yourself and communicate as best you can. But also, you know, you may have to accept that he's not going to get any better. Some addicts never get better. Some look like they're never going to get better, and then they do. You know, some people jump on the bandwagon right away and are, you know, great about recovery, but, you know, I'm sorry, he's not.
Well, and I hadn't caught the who asked for a separation. So yeah, may or may not be, but what is the plan? So let's say that you are separated. What is the plan? What is it you're looking for him to do in order for any kind of reunification? And if I'm always wary of, but you have non-CSAT therapists, but I'm always wary of separations with no plan and no ending one way or the other. And so then you end up, you know, for 14 months or 3 years or whatever it is in that in between. And so I would encourage you to, what is the plan? What are you looking for him to do? Action, not words. So to show you that he's working towards being a person that you can have a relationship with. So, and you know, what boundary do you need to set for you? And, you know, for some, living separately, remaining married, you know, if that works, fantastic. But for some, they're like, you know, I don't want to continue to hold on to this space. And, you know, I either need him to show up in the relationship or we need to move on. So whatever's right for you, you know, I would encourage you to work with a real qualified professional. But I love that you're doing the 12 steps, you know, regardless, you know, we don't use codependent language. It's not because you're broken and all of that, but gosh, I think anybody, which is what Life Anonymous is about, is, you know, can benefit from, you know, those healing steps. So next question, while working on my trauma egg, and we'll talk about what that is, with my CSAT, I recognize a period of time while I believe my SA had his first affair. I have had reoccurring suspicions about this time period over the years, and he has repeatedly denied it. He has been working hard and some change has happened, but when I asked him about it, he reverted back to all his SA habits: defensive, gaslighting, blaming, etc. Now this is on my mind all the time. Do I have to wait till disclosure to get relief, or can I approach this in a different manner? That's a great question. So first of all, what a trauma egg is. So I forgot who came up with it, but it's part of the essay stuff. But it, you know, it's physically writing an egg and then, you know, making little spots and you putting all your traumas. There's also one called an angel egg. So people often do the trauma egg and the angel egg for all the people that have been part of, you know, that have been there. Like, you know, like one person said, you know, the librarian always gave me books to read, like knew my family situation was challenging and the books were a lifeline. So both of those, understanding all of the pieces that make up the trauma egg, but you know, clearly this particular situation, you know, is active for you. So Scott, what are your thoughts?
You know, if you've had recurring suspicions for over a period of years, you know, trust your gut. We always tell betrayed partners, trust your gut. He has repeatedly denied it. Yeah, that's what sex addicts do. I mean, it's possible that nothing happened, but you know, your gut is pretty strongly telling you that it has happened. And he's doing what addicts do, which is lie and keep secrets and push blame onto you and gaslight. And, you know, I don't know how long into recovery the two of you are. You know, disclosure should really happen somewhere between 3 to 6 months of Normally, it happens within 3 to 6 months of everybody getting their CSAT. So I'm going to assume that you're still really early. And the reason disclosure doesn't happen for 3 to 6 months, and sometimes longer, is the addict is not ready to come clean yet. Lying is a hard habit to break, and addicts lie to themselves first, and then we lie to you. So we have to get through our own web of deceit to get to the truth, and he just may not be there yet. And the process of disclosure is, the biggest part of the disclosure process is getting the addict to where he can come clean with himself, so that he's capable of coming clean with his therapist and you and your therapist and everybody else. And it can take a while, and you may not get any. It sounds like you're not going to get the full truth until you get disclosure. And can you approach it in a different manner? Sure, you can harangue him and rip him with questions nonstop, and that's going to make you miserable. It's going to make him miserable. I advise just saying, okay, get a date set for disclosure. We will do disclosure on this day, and then work on accepting the fact that I will get all my questions answered properly and accurately on this date. Tammy's not a fan of polygraphs, I don't think. I am. I like a polygraph after disclosure. Tammy doesn't. So it's up to your therapists and what you want and what he wants. So I don't want to dig into that one too much. But disclosure is probably when you're going to get the truth, and you may not get it before then, no matter how many times you ask.
But I was also curious, because I was thinking, I wonder what was going on for him during that period of time. Like, why, I'm not making excuses. I'm really not. But, I was like, oh, I wonder if there was something really major going on for him that, that is traumatic. So he's, it'd be in his trauma egg that whole period of time. And yeah, the affair, I say, trust your gut, like, Scott said, but it's so complicated. Like, is there more for him? So that's why he can't even own, what was going on, and may be so in denial. But, as Scott said, with disclosure, it's the addict being able to tell the truth. And often that takes so much time, because people go, he didn't put that on there. Some of them forget. Oh, love the tale. Yeah, it's one of those where, it isn't necessarily that they weren't, specifically lying. They absolutely, could not remember. I think addiction is very compartmentalized, and so things get put into silos, and you just don't even, you don't even go there. And so being able to open the door and go, what's in there, and pull that out does take some time. But yeah, I think do the work that you need to do about the trauma that you are experiencing. I think that is real and valid work. So the next question, I know you're a huge advocate of 12-step groups, but for some essays, they aren't a good fit. I'm so curious about that. For an essay with over 6 months of sobriety, moving through therapist counseled recovery, what are some recommended exercises and practices for long-term treatment?
I will take issue with the statement for some sex addicts, these aren't a good fit. They're not a good fit because the addicts won't let them be a good fit. I'm done with that speech. Now, you can get sober.
You have to move Lily. She's like on your microphone or something.
Yeah.
That's better. Thanks.
Yeah. You can get sober and stay sober without 12-step recovery. You can do individual therapy and group therapy, and you can come to our work groups, and you can come to drop-in support groups. Not much difference between our drop-in groups and 12-step meetings most of the time, or some of the time.
Except that we don't talk about the steps specifically.
So,
yeah.
But even in our drop-in groups, sometimes if somebody's working a step and they want to talk about it, we talk about it. Research shows that the best outcomes for addiction recovery involve treatment, professional treatment, whether it's residential or intensive or individual therapy and group therapy, coupled with as much other stuff as possible most notably 12-step recovery. You know, if you do professional treatment and 12-step recovery, your odds are much, much better than if you do professional treatment and nothing else, or other things. I mean, the groups we have online, incredibly helpful. The more you do, the better off you are. But to say that 12-step meetings aren't a fit, that is obstinate, just being stubborn. I don't want to go. And my question always is, why don't you want to go? Someone will see me. Oh, really? You posted your penis online with your face for the whole world to see, and you're worried about someone seeing you at a 12-step meeting. Really? And maybe somebody will tell my secrets. Oh, because they're there for the same reason you're there. And they don't want you talking about them any more than they want you, you know,
every 12-step has a different personality. Like, I had to go find a home group, you know, when I moved here, and I shopped them. I went to different ones, and I went more than once because, you know, every meeting, you know, it could be, you know,
different from week to week.
Yeah. I don't go to meetings where there's a guru, you know, I just don't. So, I mean, like,
I don't go to meetings where they're living in the problem, where they all just sit around and confess about how bad their life is. I would like to know what the solution is.
Yes.
Find a good meeting for you.
And there's different S groups, like, you know, so there, and we have on our website, you know, all those. But you know, to me, it's I really think you know, you talk to your therapist. You know, you're working with a qualified therapist, so you know, what does your therapist recommend for you? That you know that you're, as with everything, what are you willing to do? You know, so you know, I think books are helpful. I think lots of things are helpful, but at the end of the day, the thing that gave me hope was the 12-step groups, because it was other people that said, yes, you too can do this. And they showed me how to do it. So it was really meaningful. Life Anonymous, for somebody who's not in 12-step. Yeah, this is for somebody who, so Kristen Snowden.
Life Anonymous was written to explain the 12 steps to any person, how to work them, why to work them, what benefit there is from working them. I actually think reading the book is great, but I do think you should have somebody who knows how to work the 12 steps working with you as you work the steps. And that would mean joining a 12-step group, something for betrayed partners. Prodependence Anonymous is a new 12-step group. And it's basically just for people who want to improve their relationships and the way they relate to the world. Life Anonymous is a great way to work the 12 steps for people in that program. So it's for people who are in 12-step recovery. It's for people who are, you know, not in, or at least not addicts, but maybe still go to a 12-step program. Or it's for anybody who just, you know, it's a self-help book. And it helps you look at yourself and figure out what the problems in your life are and what you can do about it. So yeah, that's kind of it.
So there's a question in the chat. So, and I've got new contact lenses, so pardon me while I get readers out so I can read this. It's been 3 months since D-Day, and I'm finding that as time goes on, I'm still struggling and heavily hurt and emotional. I'm finding my husband is starting to get more defensive when I'm elevated and going over details, facts that were discovered. At first, he seemed genuinely remorseful, but I don't feel like that's the case with his defensiveness. Is this just a phase he might be going through? Perhaps because he's struggling with keeping calm when I'm hysterical, and it's overwhelming for him too? Or do you think this is more of a red flag?
Yes to everything. Look, this is one of the reasons that we suggest that people wait for therapist facilitated disclosure and get everything all at once. When you're digging and Sherlocking and asking the same questions over and over and over, he doesn't understand that he's answered this question 20 times, but you're in crisis mode. So it didn't register, or it didn't sink in, or you don't trust him, or there's 100 reasons you're asking it again. But he's sitting there thinking, I answered it 20 times. Why are you asking me this again? And then he's going to get defensive and blah, blah, you know, and you spin yourselves both as individuals and as a couple into this cycle of pestering and defensiveness. And I'm going to use the word pestering because it's not what you're trying to do. I mean, you're trying to find some safety. And to find safety, you want the truth and you want the whole truth and you want it right now. The safer option, though, is to schedule a disclosure facilitated by a CSAT and go through the disclosure process according to what the CSAT tells you. And that means stopping with the questions because he's going to get defensive. And look, anytime anybody's questioned about anything that we feel shame about, and sex addicts, we feel shame about our behavior, we will get defensive. We will start defending ourselves. We'll start blaming. We'll start pushing on justifying, oh, it's not as bad as you think, or, you know, or we'll gaslight you. We'll tell you the problem is you, not us. It's not because we don't love you. It's because that's where we are right now. We're still stuck in our own denial. And until we can get out of our own denial and kind of unburden ourselves with the disclosure, we're going to feel this shame and we're going to continue to get defensive. You know, I said earlier, most couples will tell you, especially betrayed partners, the healing starts with disclosure. And the healing also sometimes starts for the addict with disclosure because I finally have unburdened myself to the most important person in my world. You know, I can sit here and talk about this crap with my therapist all day, but he's not going to leave me. I'm paying him to listen to me. He's not, my therapist isn't going anywhere. My wife might leave me. And I'm scared of that. So I don't want to tell her the truth, but I know she needs it. She's telling me she needs it. My therapist is telling me she needs it. Okay, I'm gonna give it. I'm gonna take that risk. And that's, you know, the first time often that an addict has become vulnerable in that way in a very long time. And it's an intimate act to tell you the truth. It's a painful act to tell you the truth. But it has to be done at the right time, and you really need a therapist or two or sometimes three there to facilitate the disclosure. And when I say three, that means his therapist, your therapist, and a couples therapist, all of whom are familiar with the process of disclosure. Because the difference, the reason to have a couples therapist, by the way, and it should never be either of your individual therapists, is a couples therapist, the relationship is the client. So there's no splitting. You know, there's no keep secrets for you until you're ready to tell that one. No, none of that. You know, your individual therapist is yours, his is his, and if you have a couples therapist, the relationship is the
Conjoint therapy with both of your therapists is also an option if they're doing it. But then again, you've got both of them working. So that's different though than you know, Scott's therapist is his therapist and it's going to be our couples therapist, you know, and his therapist knows all his secrets and then I don't really. And then, I mean, it's really problematic. But
and
you know, in this,
it's horrible because it's hard. You got to keep straight what I know from individual therapy with you and what we've discussed in couples, you know, it's just too hard.
And you don't indicate any professional, you know, and it's like there's D-Day and it's been 3 months and you're feeling, and this is your word, hysterical, you're, you know, and he's
crisis mode.
Yeah. So so on WeTonglen, WeTonglen.com, Dr. Rob did a Prodependence webinar today. You have to be a member. The recording is going to be posted within that organization. But we talked about being in crisis mode and, you know, what the specific things, you know, to do to help you, you know, ground and be settled are. And that would be different than, you know, screaming and yelling at him and him getting defensive and blaming you or shutting down. You know, I mean, that's just a bad pattern for both of you. So what is he doing to support his recovery? You know, that would be different. Are you both getting professional, you getting support? You're, you know, you're not an addict. You don't need, you know, but you know,
D-Day. I applaud you for asking this question and being aware that your need to know might be triggering him to become defensive, and that might be creating friction between the two of you. The fact that you're aware of that is wonderful, because most couples, this just goes on and on and on, and it becomes the dance, and you both know the steps, and you dance it even when you don't want to. So at least you want to put a stop to it, and I think that is a wonderful, wonderful positive sign. So kudos to you.
But the Weetonglan is only for betrayed partner, female betrayed partner. And then we've got betrayed partner groups on sexandrelationshiphealing.com that support you. The work groups, including Out of the Doghouse that starts Monday, might be a really good work group for him to join, to help learn to rebuild trust. It's Out of the Doghouse for men who have been caught cheating. So there are work groups, 6-week work groups, that start on that site. Free resources, podcast webinars like this, and drop-in groups that are on that site. So there's a lot of support for you. And I know it feels like 3 months of total hell. I mean, I own that. But 3 months in the journey of recovery, of changing, it is early. I promise if he does his work, and learns to do life differently, and you get support, it can be different. It will be different for both and each of you. I think we're like basically out of time. So thank you, Scott, for stepping in. Scott will be on with Matt Wheeler next week, Friday, and then Debbie should be back in 2 weeks. So watch the schedule. We've added some new things to the drop-in groups and webinars on the site. But stay posted. Oh, I'm gonna drop this in too. So we're going to have the attachment wound work group with Troy Love starting in early February. It's not posted yet, but it will be. I hope next week we'll get all of those things updated again. And then Eddie Caparucci is going to be doing a group about inner child work. So the work groups, these will be 6-week courses, and they'll be looking at some of those deeper issues, that can help us learn and grow, in our recovery as well. So thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Scott, as always. It's a pleasure to do a webinar with you. So,
Thank you.
Bye.